It's hard to breathe, but that's alright. Hush.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to a new video. Now in this one I'm going to quickly go over breaker demand to supply and breaker supply to demand. That's very simple actually. So obviously we've learned about order blocks, and that was what obviously set the creation of range created supply and demand zones, and obviously it's going to set the creation for this breaker demand to supply and breaker supply to demand. So it can be BTS or BDTS or BSTD. And those are your, breaker demand to supply and breaker supply to demand. Now, I don't really actively trade this, but it's important, because like I said, the whole market moves because of supply and demand. So obviously, once you understand supply and demand, you understand why the market moves. That's just like identifying, these order blocks and stuff like that, because that is your supply and demand zones. So yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to just pretty much look at both range created and the candlesticks. So in terms of range created, you can see here that we have this range. So this here, right? So from this high to this low, and anywhere in this range is a range, right? And obviously we'd be looking to buy from there later on down the line. But as you can see, as this got violated, price broke into the downside. So what we'd be expecting now is for price to leave an imbalance in here somewhere, and for price to pull back, right? Once price pulls back, you can see there's an order block around here. But if we just look left, we can see that there's a big range as well. Oops. All right, big range as well, which price tapped into. Okay, so that would be your, preferably your sell area. So from there, so the open, and your stops would just be above the range, so about there, and you could, go on to target wherever, right? And that is simply what a breaker block is, or also a breaker demand to supply in this case. And if we were to just flip this around, we can see that there is exactly the same. So this would be obviously your breaker supply to demand, right? Because obviously supply zone failed, switched to buy, sorry, and obviously it's come and tapped into the open of this, and you'll see this often. But like I said, it's not something I actively trade. I prefer to keep my things simple and approach it with just a simple order block. So for example, on gold right now, I'm expecting price to pull back up to these highs. But once you see these, you can start to take trades of them and you can start to scalp them, and it'll happen a lot as well. If we look up here, and we can probably see it here, right? We see this big imbalance. What happened? Price came tapped into it at a later date. And what if we look left within this imbalance, you can see here that from the high to the low, if we just drag this all the way out, price came and tapped into that region. Okay, and then it came and left another range created supply zone. So we can always just drag it to the whole range, right? And then as you can see, price came and tapped into it, didn't fully pull back to the equilibrium. But that doesn't matter because it depends on whether you take your entries off the open or the equilibrium. Then we have another range created supply zone, right? Because obviously price is ranging before the big move, and obviously price can tap into that very nicely. Okay, but going back to the story, this could be a good area to enter, right? Because if we were to look at this and we've seen this as a breaker, demand that got violated and that switched to supply zone, now we're looking for a trade around the equilibrium. So anywhere in the equilibrium would be our trade, and we can always go back and look for trade opportunity on a small time frame. So for example, we've seen that big 4 hourly range, right? If we were to just go and look at it on the hourly, you can see straight away without any refining. So obviously I'd go to the the 5 minute and below, but based on the hourly time frame, we have a nice supply zone there, right? So obviously we had this range created, this range created supply zone, but if we refine it to the order block, and plus it lines up with the equilibrium of this big range, I suppose on the hourly you can probably include that, but I'm just going to keep it to this range here. And as you can see, it lines up the range, and obviously in the equilibrium of the order block or the open, wherever you entered, would be dependent on you. But if we were to enter the equilibrium, that would be around there, and as you can see, stops above there. In this case, I probably would have entered off the equilibrium. I'm not just saying that because it looks better in terms of risk to reward, but I'm saying it because this is a big hourly order block. If I was to refine it to the 15-minute candle, if there was one, over a 5-minute time frame, we could find an order block within there somewhere. So for example, we can see one here, and this is the last up candle before the down move. So that would be, refined 15-minute order block within inside of this hourly order block. So we can then take the trade off the open of that, or again, equilibrium of that. It's completely dependent on you. And again, stops either if you're an aggressive trader or composite trader, or not composite trader, if you were more of a calm and collected trader, your stops would be above the hourly order block. But if you're more of aggressive, your stops would be above the 15-minute order block. And as you can see, obviously, you know, if you were to target this demand zone, that'd be a nice 6%. And if we target in lower to this demand zone, that'd be around just over 9%. And then down here, down to these lows, this demand zone, that would be 12%, right? And all we did was we identified a higher time frame break of demand that got violated, and now switched to a supply zone, and price tapped into it. You know, essentially liquidity sweep to the upside. And then obviously what price did was it broke a structure to the downside, came back up, created this pullback, and obviously we spotted the hourly order block, but refined it to the 15-minute. Price came back later on, tapped into it, and again, look at time, between 12 and 2 is our New York reversal, and price tapped into this precisely around 140. So between those two times, we were looking for those reversals, and obviously that would have been a nice, decent little trade, right? But that's all essentially supply and break of demand to supply is, and you know, there wasn't really much to it. It's just that, right? And you'll see it happen all the time. So when, you know, for example, when we used to use Telegram for our analysis, I went through a phase of just trading imbalances. I used to just trade, you know, this imbalance as a whole, and within that imbalance, I was looking for a previous supply and demand zone, because I started to pick up on these little things that, you know, price is reacting to an imbalance, it's not reacting to the order block, right? But when we look left, we can start to see, and then that's when I started to create this break of demand to supply, in this case, right? And that's when that was the creation of all of it. And yeah, if you trade imbalances just below an order block, then that's great, okay? But yeah, that's pretty much it really. There's really not much to it. I'm not going to keep it a long video. I just wanted to keep it nice, short and sweet, just so you understand, because if you understand order blocks, you understand range create supply and demand zones, and you also understand these zones, right? Because all we're looking at, right, is pretty much just looking at which demand and supply zones were, you know, being violated, so failing. And then obviously if it left a big imbalance on a higher time frame, because remember, it's got to be an imbalance on a high time frame, so this 4-hourly imbalance is big, this is huge, right? We've seen this demand zone be violated, and as you can see, price left this big imbalance here, right? This is a bigger imbalance than it is this imbalance here, right? And as you can see, within this, we have this sort of order block here. So if we just take that as the low, and we have to take it as the high as well, because that's where our stops would be. You can see that price near enough, literally, you know, we could just if we put it down to there, then yeah, that would be tapped into it. But if we just stick on the order block for now, then, you know, we were quite away. Right, but again, taking it as a range, if you go to the hourly time frame, you can start to see it as a range, and even then, you know, sort of near enough tapped into that region. And then obviously once price taps into that region, whether you take a risk entry or a confirmation entry, all you have to do from here is go down to the, you know, 5-minute and below, and look for your scaling opportunities, right? So I can almost guarantee that price would have tapped into a 1-minute order block here somewhere, and that would have been your scaling opportunity, right? Because we have taken out this previous structures. Because this looks like a one big wick on the hourly, but in reality, it's probably like a most recent, you know, swing high or swing low on the 1-minute time frame. Okay, so that's pretty much it, really, when it comes to break demand to supplies. It's just look at the demand zone and, you know, supply zone being violated. Then obviously, I'll draw it up for you now. So price, for example, was ranging like this. Up move, demand zone has been violated. Why has it been violated? Because this here, it didn't get respected at all. Then obviously what we're looking for here is for price to, how's it gone? There we go. Obviously what we're looking for here is for price to pull back into that region, right, and then look for the, you know, confirmation entries, right? I don't preferably recommend looking at risk entries on this case, because, you know, who are we to say that this is going to react from here? Okay, because price could just come tap into an order block above here, but look for the confirmation entries. This is more of a confirmation entry style approach, and that's what we're looking at. So when price taps into this region, we know it was previously our demand zone, but now it's switched to our, you know, supply zone. Okay, and then obviously we drop down to the 1-minute time frame, to the 5-minute time frame, and that would be where you'd be looking for your, you know, confirmation entry. And obviously, if you don't understand what a confirmation entry is, you'll understand that later on in the course. So don't worry about, you know, hearing these references. You'll learn everything that I mentioned in this video. Okay, but that's pretty much it anyways when it comes to break demand to supply, in the exact same way as, you know, break a supply to demand. It's literally the exact same method, but as long as you understand order blocks, this is the main thing. You must understand order blocks in order to understand these range create supply and demand zones and the break of demand to supplies. Okay, so other than that, guys, I'm going to end the video here, and thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.